5,671 fans were in attendance for UFC Sioux Falls, aka UFC Fight Night 91, July 13th, Wednesday, shown live on Fox Sports 1 with 2 prelim fights heading on the UFC Fight Pass. And got to give a shout out to some of the guys and girls on the undercard that performed there in Sioux Falls. A big shout out to Alex Nicholson getting his first UFC win as he was able to knock out the crowd favorite Devin Clark just 3 seconds before the end of the first round. And of course, fans may remember Nicholson from his proposal to his girlfriend before his fight against Misha Krunkatov at fight night. I think that was 84, maybe. That was the Thompson-Hendricks one back in February of this year in Las Vegas. That fight didn't go his way. That fight also was up a weight class as he fought that one at 205. Now back down to middleweight for this fight, which appears to be his more natural weight class. Huge dude for this weight class at 6'4". Definitely going to give some problems to some people moving forward in his very young career. And a fight that he was losing, this one being the Devin Clark fight. Got taken down, was not getting beat up too bad, but definitely was put in some bad positions, was very close to getting submitted at one moment by an arm and triangle choke there. Was able to get out of that, and then just right there towards the end was able to land a grazing right hand, and it just dropped Devin Clark. Nicholson came in with a few more, landed a few more shots. The referee had to stop this one, like I said, just 3 seconds before the end of the first round, and had to watch in the replay a couple times. Just it was a weird shot. It just hit the top of the head there of Devin Clark, and it didn't really look like it hit him solid at all. So I guess Nicholson just has a lot of power. You know, I tried to see if there was some weird accidental headbutt or knee or something that may have hit Clark, but that didn't appear to be the case. So credit to Alex Nicholson there for hanging tough, getting a finish and getting his first UFC victory. Hani Yahya defeated Matthew Lopez, who was recently featured on the Looking for a Fight web series there with Dana White and Matt Serra and Nick the Tooth. Lopez, a little bit of a rude awakening. Hani Yahya is one of the best submission experts in any division in the UFC, and just another victim to Hani in the third round via arm triangle choke at 4:19. Scott Holtzman, a very dominant performance against Cody Pfister. Really did a good job of stopping the takedown. 1 of 9 just was Cody on the takedown attempts, and was getting lit up on the feet. And then rounds 2 and 3, Holtzman really just took it right to Pfister with some takedowns as well. Really beat up on Cody. And besides a couple times where Holtzman gave up the mount twice and got swept by Pfister, that was really the only negatives I saw from the man known as Hot Sauce Scott Holtzman. And credit to him getting another victory against a tough kid like Cody Pfister. Courtney Casey, who we've had on the show, we're trying to get her back on, got her first UFC victory in her third attempt, knocking out the Ukrainian Kristina Stanciu in the first round. And after all this travels and stuff she's had to going from South Korea and Scotland for his first 2 fights, Hawaii to Sioux Falls doesn't seem as bad. And taking out a tough competitor in Kristina Stanciu, who had a solid performance in her debut against one of the top strawweights in the world in Marina Moroz. So knew that Stanciu was going to try to make it a fight. You could tell she was trying to come on aggressive early, but got taken down by a nice trip by Courtney. Courtney landed some nice shots. Eventually, Stanciu worked her way back to her feet, but you could tell that she was definitely drained and not at the same conditioning. Courtney took advantage of that, took it back down, landed some very nasty elbows, and Stanciu just covered up, and she got the finish there at 2:36 in round 1. Sam Alvey gets his first submission win in nearly 6 years, and his first win in over a year in the UFC, breaking a 2-fight losing streak, defeating Eric Spicely. And Sam making a quick turnaround less than a month from his last fight that he had in Ottawa against Elias Theodorou, which didn't go his way, but he was able to take out another former Ultimate Fighter contestant, much like himself, most recently on this past season, Season 23, was Spicely. And Spicely tried his best to tie Alvey up, not allow him to throw off those powerful punches that he's capable of, keep this thing in close. But Alvey was able to stave off most of the takedown attempts and eventually saw a position for a guillotine choke, went for it after stopping all of Spicely's takedowns, and got him to tap 243 in round 1, and was very fired up in his post-fight interview. And I look forward to getting Sam back on the show to talk more about his nice victory here in South Dakota. Caitlin Chukagian gets her UFC debut, a win over tough competitor and top 15 fighter in Lauren Murphy in the women's bantamweight division. And I thought Murphy had kind of a poor strategy, known for being a fighter that likes to be on top, heavy top control, good damage there, a grinder. Didn't really show that in this fight, only trying 4 takedown attempts with none coming in the opening frame. And Chukagian, who's been training with those fellas out there in New Jersey, Mark Henry, Frankie Edgar, and I get now Eddie Alvarez, of course, the coach Mark Henry, Edson Barbosa, did a good job of keeping moving, keeping Murphy off balance, and maybe that movement mixed in with some shots, not engaging too much in the pocket. Maybe he was throwing Murphy off, or maybe Murphy wasn't worried about the power, or maybe there was just not a lot of tape on Caitlin. She wasn't sure what to expect, but Lauren Murphy didn't press to me as much with the takedown as I think she should have, because in round 2, she was able to get her 1 takedown, be on top for almost the whole round, and outstrike Caitlin 56-15. And didn't really show much of an effort, and like I said, in round 1, didn't try any takedowns. In round 3, only officially tried 2. I think she really should have pushed for the takedown more, but you got to credit Chukagian for staying on her bicycle, not allowing Murphy too many opportunities to get inside to get the fight back to the ground, where, again, she proved that she is the much better fighter. But nevertheless, congrats to Caitlin on getting a victory over a tough girl, like I said, in Lauren Murphy. Heading to the main card, where I did not do very well in my picks, only going 2 of 4. However, this was one of the 2 that I did get right. Louis Smoka against Ben Nguyen. After a very quick opening flurry there by Ben Nguyen, which even Smoka admitted threw him off there in the post-fight interview, Smoka was able to take over pretty much from about halfway of round 1 into the eventual knockout finish there just towards the end of round 2. And while Ben Nguyen, landed a few nice shots there at the beginning, had some control, he didn't do enough damage to threaten the Hawaiian, who ended up outstriking the South Dakota native there 138-8, and only was credited with throwing 12 strikes the entire fight, which again went nearly 10 minutes. And Smoka just did a great job of going from submission attempts to ground and pound to transitioning to not allowing Ben Nguyen to breathe, a moment to pause, and didn't allow Ben Nguyen to get in any offensive positions pretty much from the middle of the first round on. And despite being the higher-ranked fighter, he was the underdog coming into this fight, and once again, to me, reminded a lot of his last fight against Paddy O'Houlihan. Just an incredible performance after maybe a little bit of a slow start, was able to come back and get a very dominant victory over a tough guy. First loss, I believe, first or second loss of Ben Nguyen's career. First in the UFC, that is for sure. And that, definitely not his first loss. Ben Nguyen's now 15-6. But his first loss, like I said, in the UFC, had a nice win streak built up as well. So nice win for Luis. I think he gets a big-time opponent. I know he was asking for Wilson Hayes after this fight. Of course, it looks like Hayes has a injury replacement for Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, who had to pull out of their flyweight title fight, which will happen in little under 2 weeks in Atlanta at UFC 201. So Smoka probably won't get that fight, but definitely will get a big fight next. Looking forward to talking to him again. And he got another performance of the night bonus, and a very dominant performance by Louis Smoka. Really turned things around. And I said the grappling is something that may be an area that Ben Nguyen can attack, and early I wouldn't say he's exploited it, but he had some success. But I think Smoka is slowly turning maybe that disadvantage or weak part of his game, his grappling and being off his back, and turning that into an advantage. I mean, his transitions his last couple of fights have been tremendous, and he's a guy that, he's trying for submissions. He didn't get a submission, but he knows when to give it up and knows how to mix in damage. So he's not just simply pressuring guys with strikes, which could lead to him getting caught in submissions. He's not just trying for submissions, which could lead him to taking damage when he's not hurting his opponent despite being in a dominant position. Keita Nakamura against Kyle Noakes. I was very disappointed with Kyle Noakes' performance in this fight. I think that he's a much better fighter, has fought and beat a lot better guys, And for whatever reason, I thought seemed like he kind of held back in this fight. Now, officially, he's credited with 48 of 81 strikes, outstruck Nakamura in the first, but had a little success early. Did Noakes? It looked like he maybe kind of rocked Nakamura a little bit, who didn't have that great of head movement. Even Kenny Florian said that, he's kind of just walking forward. His hands are kind of aside. He was cutting angles a little bit. He was being the aggressive guy, being in the center of the ring, or cage rather. And Noakes seemed kind of content to just be on the outside, land some counter shots. To me, nothing really hard after that. And Nakamura was able to walk through him. I think in round 2, Nakamura was able to find his rhythm, figure out what Kyle Noakes was going to do. Just kept on moving forward, kept on landing, kept on throwing. And Noakes just didn't seem to have an answer. He got outstruck 30-22 in that second round. He landed a takedown. Nakamura got back up pretty easily. And Nakamura was, like I said, kept coming forward, landing shots, eventually hurt Noakes, dropped him, and then was able to sink in a rear naked choke to get the victory at just 1 second before the end of the round. If Noakes would have just held on for one more second, this thing would have went into the third. But credit to Nakamura, flying from Japan into South Dakota, I'm sure is not easy. With time zone difference, culture difference, and whatever. His first fight, I believe, out of Asia, at least in the UFC for sure. So good performance on him, defeating a tough veteran like Kyle Noakes. Daniel Olynyk against Alexi Olynyk. As I said, I thought this was either going to be really exciting or really boring. I wouldn't say it was quite really boring, but definitely more towards the boring side, as the man from Poland and Daniel Olynyk was able to get the victory over the veteran, entering his 61st professional fight in Alexi Olynyk, but first in almost 2 years. And Olynyk, definitely the better grappler, pushed for the fight in this category, probably won round 1, but started to take some shots, and eventually those accumulated, cut open the Russian. He was bleeding a lot. I think that affected his conditioning. And Olynyk, maybe not a cardio powerhouse or anything like that, but the shots that he was landing, I think were definitely hurting Olynyk, who was really content on working for submission and position. Didn't really land anything too substantial in the strikes category. Eventually got outstruck by the man from Poland 100-60, and very efficient was Olynyk as he landed 100 of 111 strikes, so only missed 11 times. So when you have that type of success rate, you're definitely going to hurt your opponent. And I think Olynyk, he stuck to his guns, though. I mean, he kept on pushing for takedowns and submissions, officially credit 4 of 7. Olynyk had a takedown of his own, but I think just those accumulated shots really started to wear him down. I think maybe a little cage rust there for him as well, not having fought in almost 2 years. Also added the fact he's about 40 years old now. So Olynyk, just a little fresher in this fight, was able to land a little more damage. And no surprise to me that he got the victory. And what was a majority decision, I think one judge scored at 28-28. The second round definitely could have been close, but I thought it was rather clear that Daniel got rounds 2 and 3 after losing the opening frame to get a victory here in the cage. Tim Boetsch against Josh Samson. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Kyle Noakes fight. I thought Josh Samson was, well, maybe not necessarily completely the better fighter, but just had a bad performance. I thought just went with the wrong strategy and just went right at Tim Boetsch, who is still a solid wrestler guy. Obviously a little older, doesn't move as well as he used to, maybe doesn't take the shots as well as he used to, but still a guy inside the clinch, is still very strong, still has power, still can knock you out, and a guy that if he gets on top of you can land some damage. And Samson, a guy I thought would be able to stay on the outside, use those great kicks of his, punch at range, make Boetsch try to trace him around the cage, wear him out that way, eventually get a knockout, catching him kind of trying to rush in and bull rush him for a takedown. Didn't use that strategy at all, and instead, like I said, just went right at Boetsch. I think played right into Boesch's hands, who was able to take Samson down a few times, land a lot of hard shots, and eventually there, towards the end, was able to get on top and just unload on Samson. Is up until the finish there in round 2, 55-4 in terms of land strikes for the man from Maine. And Samson just, again, I think he can beat a guy like Tim Boetsch, but just I don't know if it was the point of pride, wanting to beat Boetsch at his own game or attack your opponent at his strengths or something like that, but I just think I don't know if that was the game plan coming in to go right at Boetsch, but that's what Saman tried to do, and it obviously didn't work out very well for him as Tim Boetsch collects another victory inside the cage. Tony Ferguson against Lando Vannata. What a fight. Lando Vannata coming on short notice, just a few weeks up a weight class. SheerDog.com had him actually listed as a featherweight, so taking on a guy that's a big lightweight and the number 3 lightweight ranked in the entire UFC. So not a very easy task for Vannata to make his UFC debut against in the co-main event here, but he did not disappoint as he went for it, as he did not allow the jitters or prestige that Tony Ferguson brought into the octagon get to him, as he was able to use kind of a karate style like Leo Machida or Raymond Daniels or Stephen Thompson style with some spinning attacks, and I think threw Ferguson off. I don't know how much tape Tony was actually able to see of Vannata, but definitely hit Tony with a lot of hard shots, dropped him a few times, had Ferguson hurt, wasn't able to get the finish. Tony's a tough guy, never been finished so far in his career, only lost once in the UFC, but Vannata kept at him. Landed some really nice shots, but towards the end, I think Ferguson was starting to figure things out, realized, like, yeah, these shots are dropping me, they do hurt, but I've been hurt worse, I've faced heavier hitters before. Started to find his rhythm, in my opinion, towards the end of round 1. Continue that in round 2, as he was really able to bloody up Vannata, who, towards the end, tried to kind of change his style. His hands were more at his waist for most of the fight, tried to move it up. You could tell he was tired and hurt at that point, and Tony Ferguson did what maybe he does best with any technique, and was able to then try a couple times, but finally switch from guillotine to the Dars choke, which is kind of his specialty, and got that after dropping down and getting Vannata to tap at 222 in the second round. And 8th win in a row for Tony Ferguson. Of course, we had him on before the fights in our last video previewing this card, and he seemed that 8 wins would be enough to get him a title shot. He wants somebody, if he doesn't get the title shot, he wants somebody big time, possibly Khabib. Again, that's a fight that he really wants at some point. So I think if he doesn't get Alvarez, I think he would settle for Khabib. That's a fight he wants, but I think he's done enough, and hopefully he'll be fighting Eddie Alvarez later this year for the UFC Championship. John Lineker against Michael McDonald. Despite being a little taller and a little longer, John Lineker once again has proved that that doesn't matter to him, taking on top 10 bantamweight in Michael McDonald, as he was able to use his speed and just striking power, able to get inside. He was able to finally find his range after about a minute and a half. Landed a nice right with a left following up that really started to stun McDonald, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. About 30, 40 seconds, Lineker just kept the pressure on, kept coming forward, kept on throwing those big bombs, and McDonald wasn't able to recover. Had a few nice counters, but didn't do enough to throw Lineker off his forward movement, hunting the head there of Michael Mayday McDonald, and eventually got the knockout there at 243 in the first round. And just a very excellent performance by John Lineker, who, despite going to be a smaller guy in this division, again, fought a lot of his career in the UFC at flyweight, had a lot of trouble making weight now at bantamweight. That 10 less pounds he does not have to worry about cutting more, I think, really helps him. And despite going to have a height and reach disadvantage against most people, that speed that he possesses, being a former flyweight, I think is something a lot of these bantamweights are not accustomed to, and it really surprises them. They don't expect his speed to be that much of a factor, and he's able to get inside and land big power shots. And while I don't think he gets Dominic Cruz like he wanted to, I'm pretty sure T.J. Dillashaw will probably get that next. Lineker definitely gets a big fight next in this division, probably a title eliminator fight, I believe. Possibly against Brian Caraway. I think that might be the fight to make next, since Cody Garbrandt, again, a fight I would love to see and Cody wanted to do. Of course, those two were supposed to do battle in February of this year in Pittsburgh, Lineker and Cody. So that's a fight eventually I'd like to see, but it looks as though Cody's taking on Taki Mizugaki at UFC 202. Sterling, Almeida, and now Cienciano are coming off of losses, so I don't know how much the UFC wants to book Lineker coming off, another win here in this bantamweight division. Of course, John Dodson is still out there. I think that would be an incredible matchup. Two flyweights there as well. So there are definitely some big fights moving forward for John Lineker, and he may only be one away from getting a shot at the title if he can beat some of those names I did mention. getting to Bellator 158 this weekend in London, England, the first time that Bellator will invade England, and it will also be their second card ever in Europe, and really their second card away from North America, as Bellator 158 will feature a 5-fight main card starting on Spike TV Saturday evening. I'm going to really just focus on the main cards fights here for Bellator, and really the main fights. Ole Thompson will be taking on Matt Mitrione in the heavyweight division. Thompson, at least according to SheerDog.com, is a natural light heavyweight, listed at 6'1", 36 years old. Does have some submission wins to his credit, and really is going to be at a disadvantage here against Matt Mitrione, who's 6'4", weighs over 50 pounds, weighs over 250 pounds, I should say. Definitely is going to have a bigger guy, heavier guy, more experience. Yeah, he's coming off, he did take some hits in his last fight there less than a month ago at Bellator Dynamite 2 against the big Samoan fellow there, Carl. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name. And while it's a quick turnaround, he's not taking a guy that's a natural heavyweight. He's never fought in a major organization like this before. He's mainly fought in different European organizations. The biggest probably would be Bama. He is on a little bit of a win streak. However, one of those wins was by disqualification. Like I said, 36 years old, which normally maybe means something, but Mitrione is right around the same age. So I think that's kind of a wash there. But he's going to have a tough time. Matt Mitrione is just such a big dude. It's going to be hard for him to try to combat that size, but we'll see. Anybody has a puncher's chance, but I think moving up a weight class, and even though you don't have to worry about cut weight and throwing damage, you can throw a more reckless abandon. I think Matt Mitrione would kind of feed off that, and that could be another nice knockout there for Mitrione and another win inside of Bellator for him. Michael Venom Page against Cyborg Santos. Of course, Venom Page was originally supposed to take on Fernando Gonzalez. Didn't quite work out that way, as this card plagued by injuries. However, still a very solid card despite all the injuries and circumstances surrounding this card here in England. Still able to me to find a solid opponent there for Venom Page and Cyborg Santos. Again, unfortunately he can't take on Fernando Gonzalez. I think that would have been an incredible scrap, and definitely a fight you can make a case the winner would get a shot at the welterweight title. With Cyborg, it probably would still leave Venom Page one win away, even if he comes off with another spectacular victory. He's finished 9 of his 10 professional fights with 6 by knockout, 3 by submission, including his last fight being that awesome heel hook submission that he had there in the first round. So Cyborg Santos, the guy that's, I think, going to test he's going to try to test the grounding there of Venom Page, who I would say, again, that's not his strong suit. He's coming at that. Again, I mentioned him earlier, Raymond Daniels, Stephen Thompson, that karate stance with the hands at the side there, with the side stance. But Cyborg Santos is a veteran. I mean, he's been in there for years. He's nearly 40 years old. After having a layup of about 18 months or so, he's fought 3 times already here in 2016. This will be his 3rd fight for Bellator in about 3 months. He's coming off a loss knockout to Saeed Awad on short notice at Bellator 154 in May. So he's just looking to fight, man. He's going to go in there, and he's going to, I think, try to take him down, try for a submission. I think he's going to make it exciting. I don't think he's going to make this a boring fight, that being Cyborg, and Venom Page always tries to do something exciting. So I think he gets a good, solid veteran. It's a good name for Venom Page to fight and potentially beat for him moving forward. And a guy, again, a different styles make matches, and a guy, I think, because of his submission background, could present some problems there for MVP. So not the matchup I would have liked, but I'm glad they were able to, 1, keep him on the card because he is an exciting guy, and 2, get him somebody that I think can test him, is a legitimate test for the gentleman, Michael Venom Page. Main event of the evening in the welterweight division, Paul Daley against Douglas Lima. Very excited to see this fight. Of course, they tried to book Josh Koscheck versus Paul Daley, the rematch, 2 times so far this year. Earlier in the year, they tried it in Josh Koscheck's neck of the woods in Fresno, California. Koscheck got hurt. Then they tried it in Paul Daley's neck of the woods here in London. Josh Koscheck got hurt. So I don't know if this rematch will happen, because if Paul Daley wins, to me, he gets a shot at the welterweight title. Conversely, the same, I think, goes for Douglas Lima. So really, unless Daley loses, I think that's the only instance we see Paul Daley fight Josh Koscheck, I think, here in 2016. It's unfortunate. It's a good grudge match. It's a good match for Bellator to build up, but I don't think they want to try it a third time if Lima's, if Daley comes off beating somebody like Douglas Lima. I don't think it makes much sense, but very excited. These two, I think, I wish they've been fought for a while, so I'm very glad that Lima was able to, no offense to Chide Njokuani, who Lima was supposed to take on a few weeks ago. This is a much bigger matchup, and I think a better fight for Douglas, because it gets him right back in contention for his welterweight title if he's win. This has not only fight of the night, but I think could have fight of the year for MMA. I think it has that type of potential. I really do. Both these guys are very dynamic strikers. You have more of the power-heavy stylings there of Semtex Daley, who really likes to be aggressive and move forward with his punches. Does have good kicks as well, but really tries to finish guys with punches. Then you have the long, lanky style there of Douglas Lima. Incredible kicks. That's. I think it's going to be the punches of Daley trying to get inside on the longer, lankier Douglas Lima, and if Lima can land those kicks, I mean, he's put several guys away with just leg kicks. So this is a guy who's just a brutal striker, and of course he wants his title back. He wants a rematch at Andrei Korshakov, and this is a tremendous matchup. I really think we're going to see some fireworks here in this fight. I'm really excited that they were able to keep Paul Daley on the card one and get him a still quality opponent despite all the circumstances and injury. I think Bellator 158 is going to be a solid card. Excited to see it this Saturday in London on Spike TV. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. I'm also on Instagram at TheJimGraham. Shout out to some of the people that support me here on Beyond the Cage. Gorilla the Bear doing great artwork as always, and you can follow him on Twitter at Gorilla the Bear, as well as Instagram. Check out his work, incredible artwork, MMA-inspired artwork, and I've featured it here on the show as well. I'll also give a shout-out to TopRatedMMA.com, my friend AJ Hiller, MMASignaturesUSA.com, of course, #1 site in the world for mixed martial arts memorabilia. Also, my friends at the MMACommunity.com, some of the best forums online to talk mixed martial arts, and they do frequent Q&A with many of the top MMA fighters in the world, so check out their stuff and follow them on Twitter at the MMA Community as well. Flying Brian J, always a good friend, supporter of Beyond the Cage, another MMA YouTube creator, much like myself, so always trying to support each other doing that. So shout out to him, always retweet my stuff as well. Legends of the Cage, same thing, shout out to those guys and Brian Moore, Sean Jackson, Legends of the Cage, Gary Goodridge, and whatnot. And of course, they represent some people like that, Gary Goodridge, as I mentioned, but Don Fry as well, who just got in the UFC Hall of Fame, so congrats to Don on being inducted into the Ultimate Fighting Championship Hall of Fame. Of course, MMAinsider.net, MMAforlife.ca, MMAfreak.com, MMAfightclub.net, as well as, again, liking their Facebook page, Facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Join the discussion today and chat with those fellows there on Facebook. Always posting up interesting questions, topics, links, articles, that sort of thing. Also, I didn't cover any kickboxing, but I will have some kickboxing coming up, but always a shout-out to my friends there at our Kickboxing on Reddit as well. I think that does it for me this week. I'm looking forward to next week's show, trying to line up a lot of interviews, especially with the fall here for Sioux Falls. Going to talk Glory as well as UFC Chicago on Fox coming up next weekend as well. So excited for that. And thanks for supporting Beyond the Cage, liking our page on Facebook, Facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast, and of course subscribing to our channel right here at YouTube, YouTube.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. So I'm your host, Jim Graham, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.